Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome. You're listening to Perfectly Healthy and Toned Radio with your host, Darren Fatman McDuffie. And now, prepare to get fat. Hey, what's cracking? Welcome to Perfectly Healthy and Toned Radio. I'm your host, Darren Fatman McDuffie, and this episode is being brought to you by I'mTheFatMan.com. And I've been promising some changes to the website. They are coming soon. So bear with me, folks, as I start to really change a lot of the things. A lot of you may have been my friend on Facebook and noticed that, some of my videos have been changing. I've taken on just some different areas of my life, different more kind of blending health and consciousness. And when I do my new website, you're going to see a merging of those two areas. So just bear with me with the website for right now. And again, I promise you that some changes will be coming pretty soon. Got an exciting show for you. This is an early show. I'm used to being on the air at 8 o'clock at night, and just so happens that my guests wanted to do this a little bit earlier, which is good with me. Anytime we can agree to do something and get them on for an interview, that's always good. Just a few reminders before we get into the interview, though. Wanted to remind you of a show I did last week. Hope everybody, again, had a really good Memorial Day weekend. I know that I did. Got a chance to go to the beach. The beach was really packed, so I had to turn around Sunday and was actually tried to get out there late 12, and everybody was on the beach. I'm here in Fort Lauderdale in the Davie area, so again, everybody was looking to go to the beach on Saturday. So I didn't go on Saturday, and actually ended up getting out there Monday and being able to enjoy some of the festivities out there. So again, everybody was at the beach. But again, wanted to remind you of a show I did last Wednesday before the Memorial Day holiday with Diane Kaiser. She has a summit that's going on right now called Heart to Happiness. If you have not jumped onto her email list or not gotten access to that, I would advise you to do so, just simply because she is taking on a big project of why a lot of people aren't happy. And happiness has a lot to do with our health, whether we want to believe that or not. You're happy, you're going to be less stress, and less stress equals more healthy, more wellness, more well-being. So if you can go to her hearttohappiness.com and sign up. You can still catch a lot of the interviews, and I think that's going on to June 8th. So you can enjoy that until June 8th. A couple more days again that you can get on that and gain access to that. Another show I wanted to remind you about was with Dr. Skye Weintraub. We talked about her book, The Parasite Menace. Talked a lot about parasites. So go back and review those two shows, give them a listen, download them to your iPod, and listen to them at your disposal. Tonight, good guest here, and we're wanting to get this gentleman on. I've heard him on several other podcasts before having him on mine, and we'll be talking to Dr. Stephen Masley. But before we get on, let me make sure that I read his bio. Dr. Masley is a physician, nutritionist, trained chef, a celebrity speaker for programs on public television, plus a fellow with the American Heart Association, the American College of Nutrition, and the American Academy of Family Physicians. Over the past 15 years, he has won acclaim for helping thousands of patients lose weight, reverse type 2 diabetes, and eliminate the symptoms of cardiovascular disease. Dr. Stephen Masley, welcome to Perfectly Healthy and Toned Radio. How are you?
I'm delighted to be here with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for agreeing to come on. My first question for you, I want to know a bit about your background, but I'm very interested in knowing who actually does the cooking in your house, since you are a trained chef.
Well, I'm a physician, nutritionist, trained chef, as you said. I write books. I've done PBS shows. And my wife's also an awesome cook. So in our house, It's whoever gets home first. We both work. So it's when you get there, you get started, get to work. It's always fun. And, it's usually going to be fantastic.
Great. I wanted to start the interview by just talking about your experience with the Pritikin Longevity Center. You worked there, is that correct, at one point in time?
Yeah, over 10 years ago. It's over 15 years ago. I was the medical director for a couple of years at the Pritikin Longevity Center. And it was a great experience, but I can't recommend what we taught then. I mean, back then we were talking about a low-fat, ultra-low-fat diet. None of my patients there could follow it. And I actually think we probably did a disservice by, yes, there's bad fats we want to cut out, but there's smart fats we should have added. And we know that now. So it was a wonderful experience working there, but my recommendations have changed quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm going to get to that. I want to ask you a question about that. But what were some of the things that you were noticing from people who were actually partaking in that low-fat diet? And I guess what you should do is maybe talk a little bit about the Pritikin diet for those listeners who might not be familiar with it. Just tell what it is, and then maybe some of the things that you were noticing about those people who were undergoing that particular diet.
Well, it got started in the 70s by Mr. Pritikin, who had heart disease, and all the doctors had given up on him, but he did not give up on himself. And he had read somewhere that fat was really the cause, and he cut all the fat, not some, pretty much all the fat out of his diet. He exercised every day, so he did like aerobic activity. He cut out all the fat, and he really did reverse his heart disease. But he got depressed, had cancer. I mean, there were several other problems. I mean, I don't think it's the ideal program, but basically we told people to eat a very low-fat diet that had, lots. You could have egg whites, salads. There was if there was any meat, chicken or fish, it was like limited to a few times a week, like 3.5-ounce servings, so pretty small. But it was a ton of vegetable and beans, brown rice, kind of a vegetarian diet with this, small amount, as in small, of, animal protein that was pretty lean. And, it was, many people, for them, it was better than the sad standard American diet. I mean, that what average people are eating today is terrible. And this was an improvement on that. But I think if we'd added, but 95% of my patients could never follow it, and none of the people working there were following it. It was just too hard to stay on that kind of ultra-low-fat diet.
Yeah. One of the things that I've come across in doing, several interviews and being able to ask questions, I had, you're probably familiar with Jimmy Moore, who wrote the Cholesterol Clarity book. One of the things that I've come across, and I'm just wondering if you experienced this when you were at the Pritikin Longevity Center, is that when people tend to cut out the fat, they're doing a low-fat diet, the body tends to compensate with carbs. It tends to make you crave carbs. Were you noticing that people were craving carbs and gaining weight during that time when you were working with them?
No, I would say the average person lost weight because there was no junk food. There was no white rice. There was no chips. There was no white bread. I mean, it was basically vegetable, fruit, beans, and nuts. Well, and actually, vegetable, fruit, and beans. There was hardly any nuts. I mean, we just, very small amount maybe as a garnish. So I found people lost weight on it, but they had cravings and they couldn't stick with it. And remember, I only saw them at the center. People came to this center for 2, 3, or 4 weeks. We fed them. We took them to the gym and we worked them out. And yeah, when they left, they had cravings for food and they couldn't stick with it. So I think the problem is when you put all this high-carb diet in someone. I think you got it absolutely right, Darren. They had cravings, and that's one of the things that adding smart fat to your diet does is help get rid of the cravings. So I think you're right on.
Yeah, I've seen that phenomenon, and it just so happens today I just decided to Google Pritikin Longevity Center, and it came up, and it's still open in Miami. So there's still some people out there who are... It's
still there.
Yeah, still some people out there who believe in this whole low-fat thing. Was that the turning point for you for change when you started seeing these things that people were not sticking to it. You had people who were actually working there who weren't sticking to the diet. Was that the notion that gave you to probably just say, hey, you know what, there's something to this, maybe we should be eating fat?
Well, when I took the job at Pritikin, to be honest, I was hoping to do a randomized clinical trial comparing lower fat program to a Mediterranean higher fat program. And I was never able to do it. I mean, that was my biggest reason for leaving. It was this constant argument about why can't we try some olive oil and nuts and avocado and bigger portions of salmon, and why can't we do this? And it was just bad until finally I had to leave. And as soon as I got out, I started doing studies on a higher fat diet, something that was really smart fat, smart carbs, smart protein, and it's been very, very successful, and I've had tons of success ever since.
Mm-hmm. How good is that fat for our heart? You are a guy who deals with people in their heart and heart disease. How important is having what you would call those smart fats for our heart?
So, Darren, here's the thing. The biggest cause of heart disease is not cholesterol. It's too much sugar in our diet. And if you're just eating this low-fat, high-carb diet, you tend to have cravings. You eat a lot more sugar, and that's the worst thing possible. So what we want to do, the number two, I think, causes for heart disease are, one, abnormal blood sugar control, and number two, inflammation. And if we had smart fats, the right smart fats, they actually improve blood sugar control, they improve inflammation, and those are the two most important steps to preventing heart disease. Now, I'm not just saying eat smart fat. I think it's critical they get it with fiber. So you eat your 5 servings of smart fat, and you eat lots of vegetable, fruit, beans, and nuts, fiber sources, and that combo is fantastic. It's the combination that really works.
Mm-hmm. How important is it for protein, to add the protein to your diet? A lot of people don't even understand fat, protein, and carbs, but how important for it is to have protein? And I'm wondering if you recommend an animal source of protein, or you recommend a plant source of protein, or does it really even matter?
I think it matters that it's clean. Too much. So I think protein has a couple of really big advantages. One, it makes you, when you eat protein, you're full and satisfied, so it helps you keep off the weight. And two, when you eat protein, especially in the morning, it tends to rev your metabolism and help you burn calories. Again, improve weight control. It doesn't have like smart fats that lower inflammation. It doesn't have broccoli that, decreases cancer risk. But it clearly helps with being satisfied and having good weight control. Now, the biggest issue with protein is it clean or is it mean? Clean protein would be like grass-fed beef, cage-free organic chicken and eggs. It would be wild seafood. It'd be beans. It'd be organic yogurt. Those are all examples of clean protein. And I encourage people to eat more clean. Dirty protein, mean protein, let me give you an example. If you think of a feedlot where they make most animal protein comes from a feedlot, where they feed it corn and soy products that have pesticides and Roundup on them, and then they inject them with hormones, and all those hormones and pesticides and Roundup are in the animal fat. So whether you eat animal fat or vegetable fat, to me, if it's clean, I don't care. If it's going to be from a feedlot, like regular store-bought food, I prefer something that's clean and vegetarian or something like that. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, you sure did, because I wanted the audience to kind of get what was the importance of protein there along with the fats. Now, you're mentioning smart fats, but in the book it says smart fats. Then you also have good fats, and I think you mentioned maybe one or two of those. I think olive oil was one. You mentioned maybe avocado. What are some of the other good fats that we need to be taking in on a daily basis?
So nuts, we should have 1 or 2 handfuls. That's like 1 or 2 ounces every day. My favorites are almonds, pecans, walnuts, pistachios, hazelnuts, macadamia nuts. I mean, those have proven benefit for your health, and most people like them. Whether they're roasted or raw or salted or not, I don't think matters that much, but I want you to eat 1 or 2 handfuls of nuts every day. And you could use nut oils to cook with too, like almond oil or macadamia nut oil. They're really good and they tolerate heat pretty well. So they're good for cooking. And then extra virgin olive oil is a fantastic oil. You could easily have a tablespoon of virgin olive oil every day. I think eggs, if they're cage-free organic, are really good fat. We should eat the egg yolks if they're from cage-free organic fed eggs. And then you said avocado. I agree with you. That's a smart fat. Coconut products can be really smart. And then, wild salmon, cold water fish, wild salmon, sardines, sole, mussels, oysters, all of those are all really healthy fats. And I want people to have 5 servings of smart fat every day.
Now, you also mentioned the term in the book, neutral fat. I'm wondering, was that a strategic word choice of saying neutral fats? And explain what that actually means.
Well, it was very strategic, so thank you for pointing that out. Yes, the fats I just mentioned, and I didn't say dark chocolate. Dark chocolate is also a really smart fat. So they have proven benefits. In other words, there's studies that say if you eat more of this instead of something else, it prevents heart attack, stroke, cancer. They're beneficial to us. Neutral fats aren't bad and they're not good. So I would put animal, like beef protein, animal fat from a cow, from dairy, so meat and poultry, as long as they're clean, if they're organic, grass-fed, they don't help our health, but they're not bad for it. For years we've told people they can't eat saturated fat like steak and dairy. But the truth is, if there's zero evidence to support that. There are most of the clinical trials that have been done where they randomize people to diet A or diet B, and one of them had more animal protein and dairy. It was neutral. It had no adverse effect on their heart. So we do have good fats. We've mentioned those. We have neutral fats like steak and meat and dairy. As long as they're clean, they're not from a feedlot. They're like organic. And then clearly we have bad fats. Bad fats are like those toxic fats that come from a feedlot or hydrogenated fats, these chemical compounds that are clearly harmful to us.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to eggs because I remember maybe 10, 15 years ago, I was just terrified of eggs. I mean, I would go and I would do the egg replacements instead of getting the real eggs.
Right, you and me both.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
I was skimming through Facebook and I saw an article on eggs, how many is too many? And I wanted to ask you that. How many is too many? And should we still have a fear or concern over eating eggs?
Well, I think it comes down to that clean question again. If they're really cage-free, organic-fed eggs that walk around eating bugs and stuff like that, laying eggs, those eggs are good for you. They have choline. They have long-chain omega-3 fats. Those eggs are healthy and it's a great source of protein. But most eggs come from these farms where they feed them antibiotics, they feed them pesticide-enriched food, they hit them with hormones, they spray them with chemicals. Those things are toxic. So if you're talking cheapo, regular eggs from the grocery store, I would eat the egg whites. But if I can find, some local, organic-fed, cage-free eggs, then please eat the whole egg. And I don't have a limit. You could have 2 or 3 of them every day. That would be fine.
Yeah, I wanted to get that out of the way because a lot of people still have this stigma that they're toting around about eggs.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right there. And all these people are out there saying, I can't eat eggs, I'll have to order egg whites. Well, no. Now, if I'm out at a regular chain store, I'm going to order the egg white omelet. But if I'm making an omelet at home with eggs I bought that were good quality, I get to eat the whole egg. That's the difference.
Yeah, you're in Florida, right? You're here.
I'm in Florida.
Okay, yeah, I'm in Fort Lauderdale, so we have a lot of these places that pop up where we can get a lot of good organic stuff. So I know that you
Even
probably
major grocery stores, like
yeah,
Publix, they have organic cage-free eggs.
yeah.
Anywhere now.
I was really surprised that I know Publix doesn't, but I know Target has started selling the pasture-raised eggs. So I was really surprised about that, and I know Whole Foods does as well. So if you're out there listening, you're wondering where to find these things, go to Target. You can go online and get access to a lot of these things.
But you're right, Darren. It used to be just a few health food stores, and now it's almost, whether it's Safeway or Kruger or Publix, where you are in the country, you can get these now. And in Europe, it's easy. They've had them all along.
One of the things that has struck in my family, and I would imagine many other families, is Alzheimer's disease. I have a lot of my older aunts and my uncles that suffer from Alzheimer's and dementia. And in your book, you talked about the correlations between, I guess, the metabolic syndrome of diabetes, heart disease, and obesity. And how does that all come about? Why is that such a catalyst for Alzheimer's if you have one of those conditions, or maybe all of them?
Well, that's a perfect question for me today, because I'm just turned in a new proposal to work on a new book on this topic. So you don't know it, but I'm really glad you asked. So I think the number one cause for memory loss, like dementia, Alzheimer's, is blood sugar. And let me see if I can explain it briefly and simply. When your sugar's running too high, we develop something called insulin resistance. Insulin is a hormone that takes sugar in your bloodstream and pushes into the cell and helps the cell burn that sugar to make energy. Now, if your sugar's running high all the time, you're eating too much of it, the insulin won't work. It stops communicating with your cells. It's like, when the hotel is full of guests, they turn people away, you can't get more in. Well, when your blood sugar levels are high, your cells are full of sugar, and you can't pack any more in. The cells won't listen to the insulin message. When that happens, then at the same time, your brain cells are unable to burn energy. So when insulin stops working, the cell can't convert glucose into energy. The cell gets sick and it dies. So initially you have decreased brain function, and people have what they feel like is brain fog. But over time the cells die, the brain shrinks, and you end up with Alzheimer's. So I would say the number one cause of Alzheimer's and memory loss today isn't because you have advanced diabetes. It's when you have the early signs of mild blood sugar elevation and you're hormonally not communicating, and then that causes so many problems to your brain cells that they die off. How did I do it? Does that make sense, what I'm trying to explain?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because it seems as though we are living in a society where we are what I will call carbohydrate people. We like excessive carbohydrates, so it makes a lot of sense that our blood sugar is always high. And this isn't coming from. Well, let me just finish there. It's not from because they're eating too much broccoli and apples and black beans. This is because they're getting these sugar spikes from flour and sugar, and we're eating way too much flour and sugar, and that's pushing us over the edge. Yeah. I'm not anti-carb, so it's not like I think you could eat too many greens or too many blueberries or too many beans. That's not it. It's all the sugar and flour we eat in this huge abundance that's finishing us off. Yeah. So are you a proponent for a low-carb diet, maybe getting off of those? Oh, okay. No, I'm actually not. But I want people to eat smart carbs. Mm-hmm. So I would say no sugar, especially no sugary drinks, no flour, no bread, no crackers. Those things, we convert that kind of carbohydrate into sugar in our bloodstream immediately. But if you're eating blueberries, black beans, or broccoli, those are all carb, right? But they don't raise your blood sugar levels.
So we've got to eat the right, smart, just like we need smart fat, we need smart carbs, and we need to cut out the bad, dumb carbs is what we really need to do.
Yeah.
So I try to distinguish which carbs raise our sugar, like from sugar, flour, and potatoes, and which carbs don't, like from beans and berries and vegetables.
Yeah. Does implementing smart fats, saturated fats, smart fats, does that help with our cholesterol? Does that give us more of the a good overall cholesterol count, or how does that work? Okay.
I like how you said that, good overall cholesterol. So your total number might go up, but the bad cholesterol could drop and the good cholesterol could go higher. Mm-hmm. So when you add smart fat and smart carbs, your cholesterol profile actually gets a lot better. You have more garbage trucks to clean your arteries, and you have a lot less trashy garbage. So you get the right type of cholesterol, not the wrong type. I love how you said that.
Yeah. The second part of that question would be, I want to take that a step further and ask you about statins, because there seems to be a lot of stuff in the news now about statins, the overall effectiveness of them. And I was wondering what your stance is on that. Is there ever a time when we actually need to use statins where our cholesterol is just too high?
Well, yeah. I mean, I have people who've had, statins work better. Let's clarify a few points. Statin works better for men than they do for women. Men and women get heart disease for different reasons, and they are more effective in men. They're much more, if a guy's already had a heart attack, they're going to be much more effective for him than someone who's trying to prevent a heart attack. So if you're really high risk, you've already had heart disease, your cholesterol is super high, I don't have any problem writing for them. My goal is I want to help my patients not need them, not qualify. The problem is way too many people qualify for statins today. They're diabetic, they have ultra high cholesterol, they're really grossly overweight, their blood pressure is super high. I think if you add more smart fat, more clean protein, more smart carbs, and fiber, then your cholesterol, your blood sugar, your blood pressure, and your weight all get better, and then you don't need the statin drugs. That's the key, to not need them. They're not evil. They have they have many side effects. They can cause brain fog. They raise your blood sugar levels. They can make your muscles hurt. They can cause liver inflammation. And something they don't like to mention is they lower men's testosterone levels too.
Yeah,
50 to 70 points, that's a lot. So they have a ton of side effects, but in the right person, they could save your life.
Yeah.
So my goal is, let's make it so you don't need them, that you don't benefit from them, because you're, trim fit and sexy looking and you eat really well, and then you won't need them. I mean, that's got to be the goal.
Yeah, with the fats and putting more of them into your diet, there's a lot of people out here also who may have problems with blood pressure. And I'm wondering if implementing fats into your diet are going to help regulate your blood pressure, especially for those who may be on the upper end.
Absolutely. Well, the most important thing probably for blood pressure is getting rid of sugar. I wrote a blog a while back, which crystal, what white crystal substance is killing us? And my question was, it's salt or it's sugar? And sugar is a lot worse than salt. And it raises your blood pressure 2 to 3 times as much as salt is. So I don't think a lot of people are trying to avoid the salt in their diet, and that's not a bad thing. That might even be a good thing. But it's much more important to cut out the sugar and flour, because that's the main thing that causes your blood pressure to go up. The other thing that really lowers blood pressure is eating more fruit and vegetables. Berries, apples, broccoli, asparagus, peppers, collard greens, whatever you like. You eat more vegetables and fruit and your blood pressure comes down. You eat less sugar and your blood pressure comes down. I mean, tons of people are on medications, and my goal is if you followed my program, hopefully you could get off those meds and you wouldn't need them.
Yeah. Getting to the sugar aspect of talking about that white substance, and you just mentioned that. how is it important for us to how important is it for us to type of maybe reduce our sugar intake?
Well, the absolute worst, I'm sure you know this form of sugar is what you drink. It's amazing that people that we're still serving sodas to kids. I mean, that's like child abuse. I mean, when you give someone liquid sugar, that's like, it's addicting. It's like you're putting them on real drugs. I mean, so it is so, so step number one, if you only did one thing, stop drinking sugared drink, sweetened, even diet drinks, but sugar or diet. So these sweetened drinks like sodas, sweet tea, and just drink water or herbal teas or unsweetened tea or a protein, smoothie like with blueberries and a protein shake. So, if we could get people to do that, just that, tons of people would lose 10, 20, 30 pounds. They'd feel better. They'd get off their medications. That would be profound. So the first step is to stop drinking sugar. And the second one would be to cut it out of all these other processed foods. It's almost everywhere. It's in tomato sauce. It's in marinara sauce. It's in ketchup. It's in salad dressings. It's like, they put it like everywhere. So anytime you buy something processed, I can almost assure you it's loaded with sugar.
Yeah. While we're talking about sugar, this is something that had me spellbound for a long time until I started to dig deeper and deeper and deeper into it, and you kind of tackled it in the book, and that's agave. A lot of people still think that agave is still healthy. It's still one of those things that they should be consuming. Talk a little bit about that and what your recommendation. Well,
Darren, I'm really glad you brought that point up because it's pretty darn harmful. Here it's being marketed as it's sweet with no glucose, so it doesn't raise your blood sugar level. Well, that is true. It is sweet, and it does not raise your blood sugar level. The problem is it's fructose, and when you absorb that, it all goes to your liver, and it gives you fatty liver and cirrhosis. So the more agave you eat, the more it's basically like turning your liver into pate. Because you're getting fatty liver. You're actually all that energy. Your body doesn't know what to do with it. It's a unique form that doesn't really exist in the rest of the natural kingdom. Agave is pretty unique. Agave cactus sugar. It's all fructose. So the only thing you can do is so your triglycerides go super high. Your liver gets inflamed. You make fatty liver. In the end, you end up dying of cirrhosis or, pate liver syndrome if you eat too much. So, I'm glad you brought it up. I mean, the sugar substitutes, some of them are worse than sugar itself, and agave would be one of them.
Yeah, I was going back and forth on that, and then I finally came across something that kind of convinced me that agave wasn't the best thing for me, and part of that was what you just explained about the fructose. So I knew that I needed to eliminate that out of my diet. In the book, you talk about
and I got to tell you, I love what's on your website. This bit about aspartame poisoning. Some of these sweeteners are worse than sugar. So I love this thing you got going on your website right now. It's awesome, Darren.
Yeah, well, thank you. I actually use stevia myself. That's the only thing that I use when I
stevia or maybe a little xylitol or erythritol. Yeah. You can't use very much, or that'll give you diarrhea. But a little bit of it, that or stevia. I think those are the two sweeteners that are probably fairly safe. They don't have much toxicity to them.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about this Sydney Hart study in the book. Very interesting study about vegetable oils and how they made the switch and what actually happened. Talk a little bit about that.
So they were under the assumption if people were to cut out saturated fat like butter and meats and use more vegetable oils, that it would lower the risk of heart disease, right? I mean, haven't we all heard that story for years? And they did the study, and they found the exact opposite. If in Australia, they have clean butter and clean meat. It's mostly grass-fed, organically fed. They're not feeding them grains and stuff like that they do here. And when they fed these people more saturated fat and less vegetable oils, they had a much lower risk of heart disease. And that's the opposite of what they thought they were going to find. But since that time, several other studies have shown the same thing. That cutting out, so that saturated fat is pretty neutral if it's clean, but vegetable oils are pretty bad for you because a lot of them are hydrogenated, or they're corn oil or soybean oil. They're rich in omega-3s, which are inflammatory, and oftentimes they're hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated. I think of, vegetable oil as like embalming fluid, honestly. That if it's partially hydrogenated, they've like converted it into liquid plastic. And the last thing we want to do is, drink or eat liquid plastic.
Mm-hmm. There's still a segment of our population out there that still believe in things like corn oil and soybean oil. And I'm wondering if you've seen those people, you work with these types of people, and is that a main catalyst for heart disease or atherosclerosis? These people who are still consuming or using these types of oils.
Yeah, I think it's making their arteries inflamed and their brains inflamed, and more important, I think, is to give up hydrogenated fats. But the corn oil and soybean oil, I don't see anything positive about them. There's nothing smart about them. And I think people would be a lot better off if they just gave them up and they shifted and used avocado oil or olive oil or almond oil or macadamia nut oil. Any of those would be a lot better choices.
Yeah. Our hormones pretty much control everything in our bodies. How does fat, actually introducing smart fat and using fats, actually help us with optimizing our hormones?
Well, like we said before, when you go on a low-fat diet, you decrease estrogen and you decrease testosterone. You mess up your hormones. Your body actually needs fat to make cholesterol, to make hormones. And if you don't feed it fat, you'll have a drop. So women have more, menopause or PMS symptoms. Guys have andropause. They're tired. They're worn out. They lose sexual function, romantic function. So not good. So yeah, a low-fat diet doesn't give the fuel we need for normal hormone structure. And then, the anti-inflammatory there's hormones that help us lower inflammation, that help us control appetite. We get those from eating smart fat. So when you add the dark chocolate, the salmon, the other fish, the nuts and olive oil, avocado, all of those things improve our hormones. It improves our blood sugar control, it lowers our inflammation, it gives us hormonal balance. And that means feeling great and being healthy. So I'm so glad you're getting this message out, and, love your website. I think you're just doing such a great job, Darren. And wow, I'm impressed. You really studied this Smart Fat book. You got a lot out of it.
Yeah, thank you. I always prepare for the interviews. I think there's nothing worse than having someone on an interview and not being prepared. And speaking of that, being prepared, I just wanted to ask you a personal question, because obviously you are what I would call off the square. You're not following the conventional mainstream of, hey, let me write a prescription for this or a statin for that, although you said that you use those in your practice. But I'm wondering if you have received any pushback from your colleagues because of the stances you've taken on fat, because it's not one of those things that it's becoming more accepted, but it's not universally accepted yet. And I'm wondering if you've had any pushback.
Well, I speak at physician medical meetings all the time. I'm at almost 20 medical meetings a year. I have spoken to more than 30,000 physicians in the last 10, 12 years. And I bring studies like that Sydney study you talked about, or the Mediterranean diet study. So the Perimed, I bring data, I share my data, and from that I make recommendations to physicians and what they should recommend to their patients. And when I do it that way, it's very well accepted. So, I talk at family physicians meetings, internal medicine, age management, cardiology, you name it. I've talked to those doctor groups, and here's the only thing they'll tell me, though. Here, the negative feedback I get is this. They say, I can't get my patients to do it, so I just write them meds because they don't follow my recommendations. And my response is, if you took the time to give them the right information, they would know, they'd have the tools to succeed. What we have too often, though, and you know this, is that people go to a doctor, the doctor's seeing 30, 40, up to 50 people per day. They have 10 minutes to, ask a couple questions, refill their meds, pat them on the back, and they probably say, and you should lose weight, exercise more, and eat better, but they don't give them the tools to succeed. So if I get any, harassment from physicians, it's because they're saying they don't have the time to do this. And I'd say, well, then give them my book. Give them the Smart Fat book. Give them the 30-Day Heart Tune-Up book. Do something. Give them the tools so they don't need your meds.
Yeah. Speaking
That's
of
a little scary for the average doctor. That's kind of a scary thought, is to give people tools and they won't need our medications.
Yeah, that is, because most people, it's a cycle and it goes around. But I'm a big Star Wars fan, and one of the things that Yoda says is you must unlearn what you've learned. And
yes.
I'm wondering, how do you get your patients? Because obviously when patients come to see you, you are not the typical physician who's going to tell them, oh, stay away from this, stay away from that. Have you ever come across a scenario where you have to tell them to unlearn what they've learned? You say, hey, you can eat butter. You can eat these, these saturated fats. How do you get them to get out of that mentality that they were on, they've been believing for 20, 30 some odd years, and start telling them, hey, this butter is good for you. This olive oil is great for you.
Well, as long as it's organic, right? You got to say organic butter, and then I'll agree. So organic butter, it's fine, Olive oil, absolutely. So, but see, when I see I won't see a patient and then let's spend an hour doing a nutrition eval with me. And we analyze what foods are they eating. Are they getting too much sugar and fiber? Well, yes, most of the time. Do they get enough smart fat, clean protein? Do they get enough fiber? Do they meet their nutrient needs? I look at like 20 different nutrients, and are you getting them? And then I point out, if you're grossly nutritionally deficient, like 80% of people, then they're not meeting their needs, and it's going to have huge health issues. So I usually, all right, we got two choices here. You can go on and have Alzheimer's, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, something bad, or you can get trim, fit, look sexy, feel better, prevent memory loss, prevent heart disease. Now, which do you want? Which path do you want? I'll help you get there. But you first have to tell me what you want, and then I tell them I got a magic wand, and I do. And I hold up my magic wand, and I say, this thing really works. If you come up with a goal, and I help you get a plan to meet that goal, it will work. I can promise you you're going to succeed. And usually they look pretty startled when I say that. But the fact is, I've helped, I've hundreds of people who their brains are sharper, their executive functions better, they've shrunk their artery plaque, they're trimmer, they're fitter, they look better, they feel better. So I know I can help them do it if they're motivated. They have to make the change. That's going to be their call. And I'm trying to give them the tools to do it.
Yeah, some people just like to hold on to those beliefs. I had two more questions for you, and then I'm going to let you go, maybe three. But glycemic index and glycemic load, this was something that always confused me, and you gave a really good synopsis in the book. Explain that to the audience, because I think I used to always sit down when I was a kid, and I would watch these, what's the Nutri-Trim or the drink that they used to have, and they would always have on their glycemic. They would either say glycemic index and glycemic load, and I would always get confused. But explain that to the audience and what that actually means.
So glycemic index is a term for researchers working in a food lab. When we give a certain quantity of carbohydrate, whether it's bread or pasta or beans or broccoli, when we give that to a person, how high does the average person's blood sugar go up? So that's the glycemic index. The problem is, here's why it doesn't work very well in real life. Glycemic index, if you eat 50 grams of carbohydrate, and you're smart, you know that's a lot. That's like 9 large carrots. Could you eat 9 large carrots in 10 minutes? I can't.
No.
Maybe with a gun to my head I would, but short of that, I'm not doing it, right?
Right.
So you can't eat 50 grams. So it's like, well, that's ridiculous. I can eat 50 grams of pasta. It's not that hard. That's like a couple cups. I could easily do that. So a much better term is glycemic load. Glycemic load is how high does your blood sugar go from one serving of food. So if you look at carrots and beets, they have a glycemic index of in the 40s, and anything over 20 is high, so they're like double high, right? But when you look at the glycemic load per serving, it's only 4. So it's actually a really low food for sugar in an average 1-cup serving.
Wow.
So rice is high, potatoes are high, chips are high, bread is high. You know, potatoes are high, but all the fruit and vegetables are pretty, except for a potato and a banana, they're pretty low. So yes, the glycemic load, the blood sugar load from eating low glycemic carbs is really low. And that's the key, and that was the point I was trying to make in the book.
Yeah. Obviously, we want to put more fat in our diet. There's a lot of people out there, and there's been a lot of controversy over supplements. What should we be taking? What are some of the other recommendations that you might have when it comes to supplements that people are absolutely deficient in that you might recommend to your patients?
Okay, so we have a detailed chapter on supplements in both the 30-Day Heart Tune-Up and the Smart Fat books. But in brief, I want everyone to have a good quality multivitamin. And it needs to have adequate B12 and like at least 100 micrograms of B12, and it should have at least 2,000 international units of vitamin D. So vitamin D, B12, a multivitamin. Do you get enough magnesium? Most people don't, so probably some, magnesium causes migraines, muscle cramps, constipation, high blood pressure, high blood sugar, cardiac death. I mean, it's really important, and 70% of people don't get their magnesium. So magnesium is a good, a multi with B12 and vitamin D, magnesium, fish oil. Those are really to me like the top 5. I mean, there's a ton of other things you could take, but if you were to make sure you got your vitamin D, your B12, your multivitamin, your magnesium, and your fish oil, wow, that would be huge.
Yeah, I got my vitamin D in this weekend. I'm probably the only African American guy that sunbathes, but but I like to get my natural vitamin D in at the beach when I go there. And
yes, but remember, you need like 1 to 2 hours every day. So for you to get enough vitamin D, you're supposed to get at least an hour in a bathing suit every day.
So I need to be supplementing as well.
And,
probably.
African American, you have better skin, than someone does from Northern Europe. In other words, you get less sun damage to your skin. That, to me, it's better. But you don't make vitamin D as well. So you might need, an extra 20 minutes, whereas if someone's from Sweden, they could get by with 20 minutes less. So most people who've got really fair skin need about 40 to 45 minutes every day. And if you're a person of color, you need at least an hour every day. And guess what? Most people don't get that.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of people out there who aren't African American, who are Caucasian, that really we don't get enough vitamin D as a society as a whole because we live most of our lives inside. So yeah.
Or we wear sunscreen because we're afraid to get sunburn, and then you don't make any vitamin D. So unless you're out there basically naked, with no sunscreen on for hours every day, then you should still take a vitamin D supplement. Yeah. But I think there is something, healthy about being out in the sun. It's calming in so many great ways.
Yeah.
Just have,
I like it. I can only take it so much. I like it. I usually sit out there for 20 minutes, then I'm up under the some shade. But
I saw your picture at the beach. You had got a hat on, though. I see that.
Yeah, I usually cover my head, and I lay out, and I'll cover my face, but I let my body stay out.
Yeah, you don't want to get sun damage on your face. That's smart.
I'm sitting down to my meal. I'm going to eat as soon as I get off here in a little bit, but I'm sitting down for my meal. What will my meal look like if I'm following the Smart Fat program?
Okay, for breakfast it could be like eggs, cage-free organic fed eggs with veggies or something like that. You could have a protein shake, which I have. I love it every day. You could have like some organic yogurt with berries and nuts, or steel-cut oatmeal, with a shot of protein powder. I think any of those with berries and nuts, any of those would be a good choice for breakfast. Or you could just do a protein bar, one of these clean, doesn't have sugar, it's got smart fat, and it's got a lot of protein and fiber. And then for lunch, like a salad with, grilled protein. It could be a soup. I oftentimes do a soup of the week with like chicken, turkey, or beans and a lot of vegetables in it. You could do a protein and double the vegetable and skip the starch. For an afternoon snack, I like nuts. I like dark chocolate. And for dinner, I tend to think of clean protein, a nice serving of clean protein, and then double the vegetable portion on the side. And if you want to have a little starch, probably the best time is night, but it's got to be a small portion, like a sweet potato, quinoa, something like that, in a small, like half cup to cup portion. But eat more clean protein, double those vegetables, go ahead and use some olive oil with it, sprinkle on some, nuts that are, slivered nuts or something for a little crunchy texture. And please use lots of herbs and spices for flavor, like Italian herbs, curry spices, chili spices, ginger. All those are very anti-inflammatory, really healthy, and they make your food taste fantastic.
Yeah. Are you a proponent for kind of tapering off? I know some diets where you eat more for breakfast, lunch, and then dinner you kind of taper off, or does it matter at all?
I suggest not. Don't eat 2 hours before you go to bed. Mm-hmm. I like mostly protein for breakfast to rev your metabolism. Less carb, more protein for breakfast. You tend to handle carbs better in the afternoon and evening. Don't eat before you go to bed. That's how sumo wrestlers learn to gain weight, is they stuff themselves before they go to sleep. That's for most of my patients, that's a bad plan.
Yeah. Dr. Masley, thank you so much for the interview. And your book is located on Amazon. It's called Smart Fat, and you actually have a 30-day meal plan in here, which is good. I know some people like to have that meal plan in there, and you provide that as well. And I'm not sure, what is your website? I know that you have a website.
So if people want more information, I've got some free gifts for any of your listeners if they want to tune in. And I've got a weekly blog I send out on updates. So that would be drmasley.com, drmasley.com. And the website's there. There's free gifts you can sign up for. So get some information, and hopefully I can help people get trim, fit, and sexy in a lot less time.
Yeah. Dr. Masley, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Darren.
All right. Have a good evening. All right. That was Smart Fat with Dr. Stephen Masley. Hope you learned a lot from that interview. A lot of good tidbits in there. I would recommend going back and putting on your iPad and listening, your iPod, and listening for a couple of times and soaking all that information in. Next week we'll be back on Monday. We didn't have a Monday show just simply because it was Memorial Day. But next Monday we'll be back, and it'll be a show that was rescheduled. I was supposed to have Dr. Maya Sheetreat Klein on to discuss her book called The Dirt Cure, and finally was able to get her back on. She was doing some traveling and had to reschedule. So we'll be talking about growing healthy kids with food straight from soil, and her book is, again, called The Dirt Cure. So if you're out there that have children, or you know someone that has children, you may want to tune to this show. And if you're an adult, you can always learn just as much if you think it's a show for kids. So, again, tune in Monday with The Dirt Cure. with Dr. Maya Sheetreat Klein. And then on Wednesday of next week, I'm going to have Tasha Lee. She'll be coming on, and she'll be talking about how she kind of got her diabetes in check through a fruitarian diet. So that'll be a really interesting show. She's actually here in Florida where I am, and we actually got a chance to meet and talk about some of the things that we were doing. We sat down at Whole Foods of all places, and we were talking about different things about health, and so it'll be a really interesting show about that. And she's an up-and-coming podcaster herself, but she started hacking herself, so to speak, if you like that word, doing some things with her diabetes, and was able to really reduce the effects of her diabetes. I believe she's type 1, a type 1 diabetic, which is autoimmune, using fruit. So that'll be a really interesting show. So hopefully you'll join me Monday, and also join me Wednesday, same fat time, same fat channel. But no, not same fat time, same fat channel. It'll be 8 o'clock. We did this one on 6 o'clock. So next week it'll be 8 o'clock. And then the Wednesday show will be 8 o'clock as well. And then we'll keep rolling on. We'll have a lot of good shows that are coming up, a lot of good guests that are coming up. So stick with me. Hopefully you're enjoying the shows. You want to give me some feedback, you can email me at perfectlyhealthyandtoneradio@gmail.com. You've had a question, I can answer that. Again, it's called perfectlyhealthyandtoneradio@gmail.com, and be glad to take your questions there, or if you have guests that you want to see. I can't guarantee a lot of times that I can get them on. Some people just aren't open to coming on and speaking on the radio, but the majority of them are. But if you have a guest that you absolutely want to hear, let me know, and I'll reach out to them and try to see if I can get them on the show. So again, thank you for listening. Peace and love. Good night, y'all.